I take a deep breath at the church entrance, the morning sunlight spilling through the stained glass and turning the aisle into a river of color. The smell of polished wood and candle wax washes over me, familiar and comforting, the same scent that has anchored me for decades. I am not early out of habit, though. I am early because this pew, the one my husband and I always claimed, feels like the last solid piece of him left in the world. Today, I want to sit there, to let the quiet rhythm of the service remind me that some things endure, even when the rest of life fractures. The pews are empty for now, a few scattered congregants shuffling toward their seats. My heels click softly against the floor as I glide past them, each step a deliberate claim, a rehearsal in my mind for the ritual that has always given me peace. That is, until she appears. Her presence is sudden, cutting through the calm with an energy that seems designed to command attention. The new worship leader. She is younger than me, probably in her 40s, with sharp features and the kind of confidence that borders on imperious. Her gaze lands on me immediately, and I feel a strange tightening in my chest, a flicker of the resentment I have carried quietly for months since she arrived. "Those seats are reserved for important families," she says, her tone clipped and final. "Try the back, miss." I freeze, my hand hovering over the pew like a ghost of habit. Shock shoots through me, but it is swiftly joined by a flare of anger. Miss, important families. She has no idea who I am. She does not know the history, the decades of Sundays, the years of service, the quiet generosity my husband and I poured into this church, without fanfare or recognition. I open my mouth, but no words come. My throat tightens as grief twists with indignation, and I am suddenly aware of the congregation now entering around us, glances flicking toward the confrontation I did not ask for. I lower my hand slowly and let my fingers trail over the smooth wood of the pew, sitting quietly, deliberately, refusing to be hurried. I watch her move through the space, organizing, instructing, commanding, a smile playing at the corners of her lips that carries a smug satisfaction I find infuriating. She treats some with warmth and others with a studied distance. A clear hierarchy she has drawn without explanation, a line she expects no one to question. My eyes wander to the stained glass, the sunlight casting colors across the floor, and I feel the old ache in my chest. My husband is not here. My voice, my place, my history. All of it is challenged by someone who arrived without knowing what she was stepping into. The unfairness is almost sweet in its audacity. I have been pushed aside in the pew I loved, and yet no one knows the half of it. I reach into my purse, fingers brushing the worn leather until they find the small slip of paper tucked in carefully weeks ago. A donation receipt. I pull it out, glancing at the number printed boldly at the top. It is a number that says more than dollars. It says influence. It says commitment. It says that my loyalty has weight, and that weight can no longer be ignored. Her back is turned as she gives instructions to a group of volunteers. She has no idea that in my hand, I hold proof of decades of unseen devotion. My jaw tightens as I watch her orchestrate the room, oblivious to what is about to come. The congregation continues filing in, the hum of voices filling the air, unaware that the quiet storm, now sitting in the pew she claimed for others, carries the power to make her regret every word. I slide into my seat fully now, keeping the receipt folded carefully in my palm. My heart hammers quietly with anticipation. I will wait. I will let her arrogance stretch the moment out, let it build, because when this is done, the realization will hit her fully, and she will understand exactly who she has just underestimated. For now, I sit, silent, calm, and perfectly, deliberately patient. The pew felt emptier than usual, though the sunlight spilling through the stained glass gave the aisle a golden glow that usually comforted me. I traced my fingers along the worn wood, remembering the decades of Sundays spent here with Henry. His hand would always rest lightly on mine as we sang hymns, as if nothing in the world could shake the calm of our place in that church. After he passed, I kept coming. It was my anchor, the continuity that reminded me some parts of life endured, even when everything else fractured. Each Sunday I contributed quietly, as he had always insisted. No announcements, no recognition, just faith and the small power of steady support. Since the new worship leader arrived, though, everything had shifted. At first, I tried to ignore her, the confidence, the sharpness, the way she moved through the congregation like she owned the place. But it became impossible to overlook. She thrives on control, on being noticed, on drawing lines of importance and expectation that suit her own agenda. The church hierarchy, too, seemed to lean in her direction, subtle nods, polite smiles, reinforcement of her authority. I felt like an outsider in my own sanctuary. I spent the afternoon at home, rifling through my donation records. Each envelope, each receipt, told a story of loyalty and generosity that had been unnoticed, unremarked upon. Week after week, month after month, year after year, my contributions had quietly surpassed those of the so-called important families who now claimed the front pews. Henry had always believed in giving without needing acknowledgement, but looking at these numbers, I felt a surge of something Henry would have understood immediately. This was power in plain sight, ignored only because the new leader assumed she could dictate who mattered. Whispers in the congregation had started to reach me, fragments of gossip about who got the front seats, who was complimented by the worship leader, who was ignored or subtly belittled. I listened, not quite participating, letting the murmurs wash over me, but each one ignited a quiet flame of anger. This was not just a slight. It was a pattern, a systemic diminishment, a betrayal of the years my husband and I had given to this community. It was personal, and it was layered, woven into the structure of authority and recognition that she had manipulated so elegantly. I imagined confronting her, but the thought of doing it immediately felt wrong. The satisfaction would be too fleeting if I did it out of impulse. I wanted precision, clarity, undeniable proof. I pictured her standing at the front of the church, smiling her confident, knowing smile, and me holding up my own quiet, indisputable evidence, letting it speak for itself. The idea made my chest tighten, anticipation curling in my stomach. For now, I let myself simmer, letting the indignation settle into something more focused. I had the receipts, I had the history, and most importantly, I had patience. The worship leader could continue thinking she controlled the room. The hierarchy could continue smiling politely, but that illusion would not last. I would wait. I would watch. And when the moment came, she would see exactly who she had underestimated. And then I allowed myself a small, quiet smile, imagining the reckoning. The church was not hers to command. Not entirely, not if I remembered, not if I acted wisely. I attend the service again on Sunday, arriving early enough to watch the new worship leader in action before the congregation fills the pews. She is already moving through the sanctuary, clipboard in hand, correcting volunteers with a brisk precision that borders on condescension. Her smile is practiced, almost rehearsed, the kind of smile meant to disarm rather than comfort. I take a seat far enough back to observe without being noticed, letting my eyes track her movements, her gestures, the subtle ways she positions herself as the center of authority. She corrects a young usher with a tilt of her head that suggests both annoyance and superiority, and I feel a flicker of vindication that I am here to witness it. Quiet, unseen, but present. Each service, I pay attention to the little things, the way she favors newcomers over longtime members, the way she references donations in passing while avoiding anyone who has contributed steadily over decades. She thrives on recognition, on control, on shaping the perception of importance, and she does it flawlessly, unaware of how transparent she is to someone who has lived in the pews she now pretends to own. My heart tightens as I realize she sees the church as a stage, the people as props, while Henry and I had only ever seen it as home, as a place of faith, community, and silent devotion. I begin volunteering on a committee, taking small, deliberate steps to reassert my presence. Each meeting is an exercise in subtlety. I offer suggestions rooted in decades of knowledge, referencing past initiatives without sounding boastful, planting reminders of my long-term contributions. The worship leader takes notes politely, but does not directly acknowledge me, which is exactly what I want. My influence spreads quietly, through competence and consistency rather than confrontation. Every nod from the pastor when I speak, every whispered agreement from other members, fuels a quiet satisfaction that is far more potent than immediate recognition. During one rehearsal, I overhear her dismiss a longtime choir member with a thinly veiled jab about being set in their ways. The words sting, not because the choir member is my friend, but because I recognize the pattern. She belittles those who have history, who hold weight in the congregation, while flattering those who will reflect her power back. My chest tightens with anger, but I do not react aloud. Instead, I let it sharpen my focus, the image of her arrogance crystallizing into something I can dismantle carefully, deliberately. Back at home, I spread my donation records across the table, examining every entry, every envelope, every receipt. I focus on the one from 3 weeks ago, the number printed in bold at the top. That number, that single record, carries undeniable authority, a silent testament to decades of loyalty and quiet service. I can feel the moment forming in my mind, the moment when I will reveal it, not in anger, not in haste, but in the calm inevitability of truth. Each Sunday, each interaction, each whispered slight from the worship leader feeds the plan. She has no idea, not yet, that I am watching, recording, calculating, waiting. Her arrogance blinds her. Her confidence, a rope I will pull taut until the moment comes. The anticipation hums in my chest like electricity. The congregation oblivious, the moment unscripted. I fold the receipt carefully, tucking it in the corner of my purse where it waits. She does not know what is coming, and when it happens, she will have nowhere to hide. The church hall was buzzing with chatter as the committee meeting began, sunlight pooling through the stained glass windows and casting fractured rainbows across the polished floor. I arrived early, giving myself time to settle in, to observe, and to prepare for the moment I had been shaping in my mind for weeks. The worship leader was already at the front, clipboard in hand, directing volunteers with that same clipped authority, that same practiced confidence that had irked me from the moment she arrived. Today, the congregation would see her not just as a leader, but as someone I was about to challenge, carefully, deliberately, with no haste and no anger, only undeniable truth. I waited until she was deep into her spiel, pointing and correcting, commanding attention as always. Then I spoke, my voice calm but clear, carrying through the room. "Excuse me, I'd like to address something before we continue." A hush fell over the group. I felt the flicker of surprise when all eyes turned to me, including hers, the spark of recognition that someone had remembered, someone had noticed, someone had always mattered. I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of my presence to settle over her like a quiet storm. She attempted a laugh, brushing me aside as if I were a minor interruption. "Yes, and what is it you wanted to say, miss?" The title was deliberate, an echo of the dismissal she had first delivered weeks ago. My chest tightened, not in panic, but in anticipation. I could feel the moral satisfaction building. This was the moment where restraint and patience became far more powerful than immediate confrontation. "I've been a member of this church for more than 40 years," I began evenly, each word deliberate, measured. "My late husband and I have supported this congregation quietly, consistently, without expectation of recognition or praise. We've volunteered, contributed, and helped sustain programs that now benefit many of the families you call important." I paused, letting the room absorb the subtle implications. The committee members shifted in their seats, sensing the tension crackling in the air. I reached slowly into my purse and unfolded the receipt I had carried for weeks. The number printed at the top was bold, unmistakable. I held it up for all to see, letting it dangle between us, evidence of decades of devotion that could not be ignored. "This receipt," I continued, "represents a portion of the support my husband and I have provided over the years. The totals speak for themselves. We have been here, we have mattered, and our contributions have been real and sustained." Her reaction was immediate and visible, a flash of shock, a stiffening of her shoulders, a defensiveness that faltered under the gaze of the entire room. She opened her mouth to retort, to diminish the facts, but the evidence was unassailable. And for the first time, she hesitated, searching for control that had already slipped through her fingers. I laid out the numbers carefully, quietly, without a hint of triumph in my tone, and the room went silent. Committee members exchanged glances, realizing the weight of what I held up against her assumptions and arrogance. Her authority teetered, a tower built on confidence and performance now cracked by decades of unseen loyalty. I held the receipt for a long moment, letting her discomfort deepen, letting the congregation feel the shift. She had no answer, no witty retort, no charm that could undo the undeniable truth I had placed in plain view. The power in that pause, in the undeniable clarity of fact, stretched the room taut, and then I let it hang there. The room was quiet, the tension heavy, the kind that presses against your chest and holds you in place without warning. I lowered the receipt slowly, letting the weight of decades of service and unseen devotion settle into the eyes of every congregant before me. The worship leader's smile had vanished entirely, replaced by a tightness in her jaw and a flush creeping up her neck. She opened her mouth, but the words dissolved in the space between us. She could not argue with numbers, with facts, with proof of loyalty that had been invisible only because she had chosen not to see it. A few members murmured softly, glances passing from me to her and back again. The authority she had wielded so freely for weeks now felt fragile, almost laughable. She had built herself on perception, on commanding respect through energy and control. But here, in the face of truth, she was dismantled silently, piece by piece. I could see it in her eyes. The realization that she had misjudged me, that her confidence had been nothing more than a fragile mask over inexperience. I felt a calm satisfaction settling over me, deep and quiet, the kind that comes not from anger, but from knowing that justice had been delivered exactly as it should. I stepped back, letting the room breathe the shift. The committee members, longtime congregants, and volunteers who had watched her assert dominance all nodded subtly, their respect for me unmistakable now. Whispers of acknowledgement reached my ears, soft, approving, finally validating the decades of dedication my husband and I had offered without fanfare. I could see it. My presence, my loyalty, my history in the pews had been reaffirmed. The church, the place that had felt unfamiliar and unwelcoming under her sway, now felt like it had righted itself, if only for a moment. I returned to my familiar pew after the meeting, sliding in gently as the sunlight touched the polished wood, the stained glass painting colors across my lap. Tears welled quietly in my eyes, not from sadness, but from a release I had waited years to feel. Henry's memory washed over me, the quiet assurance he had always carried, the patient belief in doing what was right without demanding recognition. Today, that patience had borne fruit. Today, restraint, strategy, and evidence had dismantled arrogance and entitlement. I closed my eyes and let myself remember the Sundays spent beside him, the silent contributions, the small acts of faith that had often gone unnoticed. It was a reminder that loyalty, wisdom, and moral clarity were rarely flashy, but their power endured. The worship leader's downfall was complete. No threads of influence remained, no chance for her arrogance to reclaim momentum. She was a cautionary tale of hubris, and I was the living testament to patience, observation, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing your worth. This was not just about one church, one leader, or one slight. Betrayal and underestimation occur everywhere. In workplaces, in families, in communities. People misjudge, they dismiss, they assume invisibility equals irrelevance. And yet, the rewards of patience, clarity, and measured action are universal. I smiled softly, letting that thought linger as I looked around the pews, imagining other stories, other moments of justice, other quiet victories waiting to be claimed. Today the gavel had fallen. The lesson was clear. I had won. And now, for the first time in years, I felt entirely at peace.